In this video we're working on exercise 14-17 in our textbook. We've already got a little bit of a start here on the application. You can see that we've imported all the libraries that we need. We are also giving it a name and extending the application. We have our override in. We've begun constructing our start method, and we already have our public static void main. And if you need to, you can pause just at this point just to get caught up. All right, so the thing that we've done so far is we've basically just created the environment in which we're going to work. And now we're going to go back to the textbook, and we're just going to take a real quick look at the thing that we're trying to make. And the point here is to analyze what we're going to do and where we're going to place things. So we're going to look at all the different objects that we need to draw on the screen. And it looks like we got an arc, vertical line, horizontal line, short vertical line, another vertical line, and then 4 lines on angles. And we were just poking fun of this in class where his arms are coming straight out of his head. And we really kind of need to talk about how we are going to create these shapes. Now, if you were looking at some of the videos that we made lecture-wise for this chapter and reviewed some of the examples, some of this should be a snap, right? How do you create a line, you guys? Well, first of all, you need to make a new line, right? And then you put in coordinates. So how do the coordinates work? Do we need a start point and an end point? All right. Anything else we really need? If you have a start point and an end point, each one of those spots is going to have an X and a Y. So right there you're going to have 4 things that you're passing in, right? And then depending on how you lay things out, you might add something else to it. But I think actually just X and Y, and I'm just looking at the stuff on the screen that I have here, I think that's all we need. So we need a start point. So for example, if I was to do this top line, I might do something like, well, my X is, let's say, 50 or 60, something like that. And the Y might be 10. That's for the origin. And then the end point might be, let's say, 300, and then that's also 10. But the thing that we have to be really careful of is getting these origin points to match up. So, you know, like knowing that particular spot, that'll be a spot that's shared by this line. All right, and that endpoint here is going to be shared by this line. And then where this circle begins is going to be relative to where that point ends. And because of the way that circles are put together, we start with basically the center point, and then we have a radius. So we're going to have to do math to accommodate that radius for positioning. So if that endpoint here was, let's say, 50 pixels down, then we would need to add to it the radius in order to get the circle to sit in the right spot, so that the center of the circle doesn't sit here. And hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Now, the other thing that we have to do, I think that's a little tricky, is this arc. And when we do the arc, we need to figure out some of the points. Now, how do we make an arc?
It's part of a circle.
Right, it's part of a circle, but in this case, a circle is a different object in these libraries than is an ellipse. All right, so an ellipse is a circle-like shape that's, you know, more stretched out in one direction than the other. Okay, so in order to do that, we can just declare a portion of the ellipse, and the tool that you use for that is, it's an arc. and the arc has its own syntax, and all the parameters of that arc. In fact, I think it's not a bad idea to maybe try to do the arc first, because once we have that in position, then we can kind of build everything off of it. The other way that we could do it is we could start with one of the lines. In fact, I know that I'm going to do an arc. So right now I'm just going to type arc right here, and I know that I haven't built it yet, so I'm just going to put it in as a comment. The other thing that we want to consider is, all right, if we're going to make lines, how many lines are we making? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I'm counting 8 lines.
Well, you could make the 7th one, just go through his head to his legs and then cover with a circle.
Okay, that is true. So this one here could actually be from here to here, with the circle sitting on top of it filled with white. Right?
You don't have to match them up.
Now the question is, will the circle sit in front of the line?
If you draw last.
That's the key. All right. So whatever you draw last is going to be furthermost, or furthest most forward. All right. Let's actually start with figuring out maybe how big do you think this object is going to be? How big is this whole window? Now I have the author solution in front of me, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit. But just let's make an educated guess. If I was to look at a window, and I don't know if this is like close to actual size, to me it seems like it might be a little bit smaller than actual size. So what I'm going to do is maybe enlarge this to the point where like the X is about the size of the X on my screen. So knowing that my display here is, I'm guessing, what is it, 1600 maybe wide? Okay, so we're at 1600 wide, and then given that scenario, how wide, if this is 1600 all the way across, how wide is this window and how tall is this window? Guess.
200 by 200. I started screwing around 300 by 300.
Okay. Well, the author claims that it's 400 tall and 250 wide. Does that seem right?
Seems a little narrow.
Yeah, it seems a little narrow.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm not going to trust what he's saying.
You know what you can do though?
What?
Is MS Paint also does its coordinates from the top left, so you can just, I just drew it first. Cheat.
You know what, Kevin? That's not really cheating. So what Kevin is suggesting here, is that you just bring up the paint program, and he just went ahead and drew it. So he's, you know, just approximating. Oops. This is not my preferred editing software. Now notice what Kevin was pointing out basically is that these coordinates are actually being specified down here as far as, like, see where my mouse is right now? It'll tell me my location. So this bottommost number that sits right here tells me my location. So you could mock it out and make an educated guess. Now the other thing you can do is you just guess, and then you can fiddle with the numbers until it goes where you want. So that's really up to you how you want to proceed. I think that's not a bad approach. So if you get an image from somebody that you want to kind of try to replicate, you could throw it into a program like this or any good image software, and then you can just move your mouse around and figure out what the sizes are. And that's one of my tricks when I've done like web page development. Somebody will send me an image and I want to like recreate a shape, because I don't want a picture, I don't want a JPEG of a shape, I want the shape, and then I just put it into a graphics program and then measure out what the dimensions are. So that being the case, let's go ahead and go back to Eclipse, and let's make some intelligent choices here. Now we need to do an arc, and we know that, and let's say that that's a given. Let's start by exactly what I did here. My first thought is to draw this vertical line, right? That's kind of like the main part of the hanging post. We got to get the post in there. So let's get that post in there, and we're going to create a line. We'll just call it line 1. And then we need to put in some parameters, and I'm waiting for it to auto type for me. And it's not doing it. Okay. Why is it not doing it? Okay, so like the author was doing in his video, I wanted to invoke a list of all the possibilities here, and we were watching one of his videos from the book, and apparently if you do control space at the end of the line, it'll add in what the possibilities are. So let's look at what we can put in. So here it just says line. We don't want that one. This one says start X, start Y, end X, end Y. That sounds like the one that we want, right? All right, so let's go ahead and choose that. And so we need a starting X position. So how far over should we come from the edge of the screen? 30. I think a little bit wider than that.
Like a quarter of the size which would make.
Yeah.
Okay. 60. Why? I don't know, just because. All right. And then we're going to need a starting Y position, so how far down are we? If this is 60, that must be 20? 20? What about end positions? Yeah, it's going to be 60 because we're going to go straight up and down. And I should probably be good and put in some spaces here so it doesn't look quite so. Yeah, 60 makes sense. Now what about an ending Y? How tall should it be? If this is 60 and that's 20, this must be about, what's 3 times 60? 300? Patrick says 300. I was thinking more like 240-ish.
How long should the line be?
Yeah, the question was how long should the line be?
But we figured it out,
All right. So that's going to be my first line. Now, you know what we can do, and I don't know why I'm just thinking about this now, but we can put in some code to display what we've done so far. So I'm going to actually go to an application that we've already written, and I'm going to copy this, the part that puts the stage on the screen.
Okay.
And I'm just going to call this exercise 14-17. Now we don't have a size declared for the pane, but let's just make a guess of 400 by 400. I'm just throwing numbers out there. Okay. Just so we can see what's happening. I do need to put in a launch here with args. Yeah, we need to use line 1, so we need to display that. Right, do you guys remember the technique for that? He demonstrated it in the video too. This is where we need to get through the pane, get the children, and then after we get the children, he did an add all. And that one, remember, is really flexible, so what are we adding? Line that we made, line 1. So all this is going to do right now is it's going to put that first line on the screen and kind of give us a perspective as to where we are. Now if you really want to cheat on it, when it's not really cheating, it's just being clever, we could take a screenshot of that output, drop that into Paint, and then move our mouse around and draw right off of it. So that's one way to approach it. So just food for thought. So let's save that and run it and see what it puts up on the screen. All right. Looks all right. I could probably make it much larger, right? In fact, you know, my thought here is, looking at this as our drawing, I'm going to move it over from the side of the screen a little bit, maybe up to 100. I'm going to move it down from the top, maybe 40. Then if this one, the starting X is 100, the ending X needs to be 100. And I think it could maybe be a tad longer. So we'll go with Patrick's original suggestion of 300. So we're saving it. Now I'm concerned actually that might be too big. And then we're going to run it again. Okay, that looks a little better, but now I want to make the window bigger. So I'm going to make the window wider. Okay. If I want to make it wider, let's go with 600. Yeah, no, it seems big. Oh, that's taller. Excuse me. Okay. Well, all right. We can tweak those dimensions later, apparently. All right. So we got the first line. Now we need another line. And the second line, let's call it line 2. And let's make this second line the one that's going to go across here. So I'm going to guesstimate, if that line there is 300 tall, this will be like 120. So if it's 120 long, we have to consider our starting position. So our starting position for the second line is the same as the starting point for the other. And then if we're going to go, what did I say, 120? Well, we have to add 120, right, to our original 100. So instead of doing the math on it, I'm just giving you a little hint here. You can keep that, and maybe the better way to do it is put the 100 first. So we're taking the 100 that we already have. If I could type, we would have something here. All right? And then adding what I think the width is. I could add them together and just say 220. But that way I can take into accommodation what my actual size is. So if I'm thinking that I'm going to change the size, then it's just one number I have to change instead of redoing the math and changing the whole thing. All right. Don't have to do it that way. You can actually just put in the number. So then what's the y going to be? If I'm drawing a line across, the y is going to be this, right? So it's going to be the same as this y. So that's going to be a 40. All right? Then we're going to come down here, and then I'm just going to add to this, get children, add all. I'm just going to add line 2. And save it, and then I can test, as I'm doing it, I can test each one. Right? So far so good? All right. Let's work. I want to get all the simple stuff out of the way. To me, that arc is probably the most challenging one. And frankly, I don't remember all the parameters, so when we pull up the list, we'll try to figure it out, and if we have to, we go back to the book and look at the reference. All right, so let's do the next line. The next line is going to go from this point down to roughly here, or we can use the Kevin trick that we talked about. Well,
I'd like to see the Kevin trick.
you want to see the Kevin
I
trick?
think it'll be easier than trying to, well, I guess lining it up wouldn't be quite so difficult.
No, it's not, because numerical, it's all done with
Yeah,
numbers. So,
right.
all right. So let's look at the original that we're trying to copy, and then figure out how wide we need to be, or how long we need to be. So if this one is from here to here, that length goes from 40 to 300, which is 260. We don't want it to be quite that long, so maybe 190, 190 tall. Does that sound reasonable? My suggestion is that you nod and smile and say, yes, that sounds reasonable. You think it's too big?
Oh, we're doing the Kevin.
Yeah, we're going
Then
to...
yeah, that would be right then.
Yeah, what we're looking to do is, instead of drawing one line and then another line, we're just going to make one long line
Okay.
and then put this circle over the top with a white fill.
And you find out that I have that the white fill, you have to either find like the border thing, which I don't know, or I just made two circles. Just made a black one and a white one. So if you want to do one line or two lines,
Okay,
No big deal.
there is...
that was probably still easier than making two lines, but.
Well, let me see how the author does it.
Rose color?
No, you just do fill and stroke. That's how he did it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's do that long line, and then we'll go from there. So the starting X position is going to be the same as the closing X position of the second line, right? So the starting position is the same as the closing position. So really all I have to do is copy this in place of that. So the starting X position, starting Y position. Then we need to, what did we figure it was? I said 190. So we're going to take the Y position, which is 40. That's the starting Y position. And then we'll add our 190. And then, oh, I'm sorry, I'm putting that in the wrong spot. That will actually go here. That's the... Okay, you can see I'm thinking this through in my head here. So it's XY, XY. So the X isn't going to change, right? So the X is going to stay at 220. So that's what this is going to be. The Y is going to change, so we have a starting position of 40, and then we're going to add 190 to it. Okay, that makes sense to me. And then we also need to change this to line 3. Save it. Add line 3 here. Save it. Let's run it and see where we're at. Okay, that looks okay too. That might be a little long. I don't know if we have enough room for legs, but I guess we'll have this little arc at the bottom. Right? And then we can always go in and tweak everything, so don't worry about how it looks right now. Now, my inclination is to get the circle done next. Okay? Let's actually get clever and preset our radius. The reason is well, you know what? I normally would do that if I think I'm going to use the radius multiple times, but I don't actually anticipate that that's going to be the case. So let's just go ahead and create a new circle. So we're going to do circle. We'll just call it circle with one R, which is going to be a new circle. And then let's look at some of the possibilities that we have here. So we need a radius. I'm not sure we need much more than a radius. Or do we need a radius? We need a start position, right? We're going to need an x, a y, and a radius. Does that sound reasonable? So we need to get a position for it, and then we need to know how wide it is. And that should really take care of it, honestly. So now the question is, what's our position here? What's our x position? Our x position is going to be this. That's how far over we are. So that's 220. Now I could type out 220. Should we just do that? Then we need our y position. Now our y position, we need to do a little bit of math here. So we need to come down a ways, and then we also need to accommodate for the radius. So why don't we just say, if this is 40, let's come down 40 and add a radius of 40.
Probably want to raise to 20.
Probably want to do what?
Raise to 20. I think you're looking for a diameter of 40.
I was looking for a radius of 40. Well, you know what? We'll just try it, see what happens. Right? The worst thing that's going to happen is it's not going to work and we adjust our numbers. All right, so, all right, I'm trying to get a y position here. So if that's 40, we want to come down 40, so that's 80. And I want a radius of about the same, so it's 120. All right, so let's just do that, 120. And then we need a radius. And I already said a radius of 40. So even though this is not going to look the way that we want, I'm going to check and just see where the circle is right now. Right? Now, I think that we are going to run into a problem. What's the problem?
I didn't show the circle.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. That helps. We're telling it to, telling it to show up. All right, so there it is. That's actually,
Yeah.
I don't know, it seems a little big-headed to me. But, he's...
Once he gets arms, he'll be fine.
All right, so that actually worked out pretty good. Let's now set the fill color and the stroke color. So apparently the fill color by default is black. Okay, so we need to do circle set fill, and we want that to be color what? White? Yes?
Or no? Could you put no in there?
Well, null would be equivalent. Well, if you want transparent, if you want to see that line going through his head, that would work out just fine. So then we're going to do our stroke. And our stroke is going to be black, so all right. Once again, saving. And let's run it. Hey, that looks pretty good. All right, I think the next easy part is to do the two legs at the bottom. So we need to get our starting XY. Those are going to be lines, right? I'll do the lines right here, just kind of in order of creation.
Your start line will be the end point of the body line.
Okay, so that's actually giving me reason to put it up here, right? You know, honestly, it doesn't matter, does it? Okay, so the starting point's going to be the end point, right? Of that one. So I'm just going to take those two to replace these two. And then we need to figure out what these are. So right now I'm just going to kind of get rid of them and then figure out if this is basically, here you know, I am going to change it to regular coordinates, 220 and 230. So if this is 220, 230, we're going to come down with the y, right? So the y is going to increase. So this is going to be the y. So the y is going to go from 230 to, let's say, 260, 280, something like that. And the x is going to get smaller, right? Because we're going back this way with it. So instead of being at 220, let's make it like 180. Totally guessing. Then let's add line 4 to the mix. And let's run it again. Lucky guess. All right, and then we need to do the same thing again. So the x and y starting point are once again going to be the same. But this time, instead of adding 40 to the x, or subtracting 40, we're going to add 40, so it'll be 260. And the y should be the same, right? Let's test it. Now the one thing that I'm hoping you pick up from this, and you guys should know this already, is kind of like this one cardinal rule of coding that I learned over the years: one change at a time. And then sometimes you should realize that you make a change and it might impact other things as well. All right. Now all we need is some arms coming out of his head and an arc. All right. Now the question is, do we do it as it is in the picture? Because the formula for it is actually a little bit complex.
Oh, we could do it so it looks better and it'd be a little easier.
Yeah, my inclination is, and I'm going to share with you the formula. Oh yeah, that's pretty complex. I'm looking at his formula. I wouldn't do this to you guys. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to make the arms come straight out from here. If you can figure out how to make it come off of here, and you figure it out and submit it to me, I will give you extra credit. I'll give you 1 point of extra credit. What? If the arms come off the circle.
Well, like you
Oh,
want
I
the
can think of a
formula
couple ways to do it.
Rather than just guessing, you want like a formula rather than just kind of.
Yeah, he's got a formula.
Okay.
But you know what? Strike that extra credit comment, because I know what Kevin's going to do already.
That's really it.
I was
Just-
just going to email Kevin.
All right, what's Kevin going to do? He's going to actually work off of this line, right? And have it go behind the circle, and he can just have two arms hanging off of his head. Hey, you know what? That's what I'm doing too. All right, I'm going to copy both of these two lines. All right, so our x is going to be the same. The y is going to be way up there. In fact, the y is going to match the y of the circle. We'll start right from the center of that circle. So these will become 120. Then we just have to have an endpoint. The x, 180 and 260 might be okay, but I'm going to make him, his arms a little longer than his legs by 10 pixels. All right, and then I'm looking at the y. 280 is obviously going to be too long. So if we're at 120 in the y range, and here we went from 230 to 280, that's a difference of 50, right? So 120, so 170. I'm actually going to make these 180. All right, so I'm saving this.
180? Okay.
I'm just making a total stab in the dark guess. Then we also we need to add those here, except we got to name them right. All right. You know what we really should do is we should just program a whole Hangman game. See, but once you have the drawing in place, right? Then all you have to do is make a line appear or not appear. Yeah. Then you got to like create an array that holds all the letters. You got to have a way to enter the phrase or word into a different array and then do a comparison. And figure out, we did programs like this in the previous Java class, like how many times does the word or the letter E appear in this word and this word? Remember that? So you could like copy that. And it wouldn't take much. Just a few more hours of your life. Yay! Giant mustache. So how do I fix that? Apparently, it's where the circle is positioned in here that is the trick, right? So we're going to put the circle after line 7. And we do still need to add an arc, but let's get rid of that closing comma for a sec. Let's run it. All right. Those are some really weird looking arms.
We can really just bring the whole thing down. Bring the whole
You know,
thing down.
yeah, you can bring the whole thing down. So the way that, how would you bring it down?
Your starting point.
Yeah, these 120s right here, I could make them like 150. And let's run it again. Hey,
Ooh.
that's not too bad because I just changed the Y, so it went from like a more triangular shape to, that's good. That works. That's almost normal-ish. All right, that's cool. I'm happy with that. Now, the last part is to do the arc. The arc's a little bit different, and if you go back through the chapter and you find the part on arcs, it'll explain what all the different little parameters are. But I just happen to have a handy little cheat guide next to me here. Now, keeping in mind that an arc is a portion of a circle, and you know, I'm just trying to think of a way to demonstrate this that's efficient. Boy, I have a lot of stuff open here, huh? Let's go ahead and close those. My mustache version. Okay, much better. I'm going to go back to my paint program here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an ellipse tool, and the point of me doing this is to explain a couple of different things about how this works. The one is when we're dealing with a regular circle, there's one radius, right? And that radius goes from whatever the center point is to the edge of the circle. So usually we have one radius. But when we do an ellipse, there's actually two. One that goes the long dimension and one that goes the short dimension. So we have two to declare. And then we still have an origin point, which is an xy. So we have x, y, radius 1, radius 2. Okay? So that's 4 different parameters that we have just there. That should be enough to declare most of it. Now there's another little tidbit we need to add. Does anybody remember from the reading what that is? What other parameters might get thrown in? Well, actually, why don't we let Eclipse tell us? Let's go ahead and come back up here and let's make this arc. It doesn't have to be up at this spot, but when I looked at the drawing, that's the piece that kind of appeared to me as being the first thing to start with, but then I discovered that really what's more logical is to start with the easy pieces. So what I'm doing here is looking at this. Okay, so remember the arc, as I was trying to explain to you, so there's a center position, the x and the y. There's the one radius that goes across, the x is across and the y is tall. And then we also have the start angle and the length. So they have a little bit of a description here. So let's read it. It says the starting angle of the arc in degrees. So for an angle like the one that we have, we're basically doing half of an ellipse is what ours is. So what's the start angle? 0. So then what's the length? Now think of like what this description says is the length is the angular extent of the arc in degrees. If one revolution is 360 degrees. So half of it is 180. So we're going to have basically an xy position, so whatever that's going to be, the radius x, the radius y, the start angle, which we've determined to be 0, and the end, which is the length in degrees, which is 180. So let's go ahead and type that in. And we know that, we know the 0 and the 180 are the last two things we're putting in, right? So I'm putting them in so I don't forget. But for our x and our y, our x, right, if you can picture where this is sitting, if our x is 100, right, the x of this is going to be 100 too.
Can I repeat for a second?
Absolutely.
Where did you put the zip file of the images? See, we misplaced it since that.
All right, so given the fact that that one line is at position 100 xy, we're going to start with our x position of 100. That first line ends at a y of 300, right? So wherever we go from there, whatever we want that x radius to be, and remember the x radius is this one, right? No, that's the y radius. So our x radius is going to be this, which looks like it's, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70. No, excuse me, we're looking for the y position. So please strike what I just said. So we're looking for 100, and if that first line ends at 300, we want it to be what? Maybe 30? Okay, so 30. And if we already... 330. Okay. It's that special math that I do. Now, given the fact that that position is going to be at 30, it also tells us that the radius is going to be 30 for the y position, right? So it's going to be 30. Then all we need to figure out is the radius for the x position. And I think I already guessed at what, 60? 90? So, let's make it, let's meet in the middle, Patrick. Let's say 72.5. Let's just make it 72. Just like, once again, a complete guess. And we do need our semicolon here at the end. We also need to add this to the children here. We'll just go arc. We're saving it, and we're crossing our fingers because it's going to be perfect. Oh, almost. Actually, that's not too bad, but if we're going to mimic, apparently the arc's got a fill and a stroke also. So what we can do, what we shall do, is we're just going to copy these, add them to the arc, but instead of circle, we say arc. Saving, and voila. It could be better, but it works for me. So if you want to tweak it, you can just make a few adjustments to things, play with it, see how they behave, maybe change the size of the pane. But that really is exercise 1417, and I'm ending this video here.